Hey, welcome back everybody to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and Raymond Shaw is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life. I'm joined in this episode by my co-host.
Hey, I'm Gooey Fame, and I'm sweating profusely on the train.
And we've returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows and wrap up warm, sweaty or not, because this week we're returning to the Cold War with a look at two tales featuring brainwashed assassins and simmering political conflicts. It's 1962's The Manchurian Candidate and the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Mind's Eye.
Nice little pairing.
Yeah, some classic TNG.
Oh yeah, always feels good to go back. It's like a warm blanket, if that's a thing.
It is, and I think that the kind of story that we are talking about today, both of them, served as kind of a warm blanket for a lot of the 20th century. We'll talk about it in our feature, but this kind of story, you know, the political thriller, you just don't see it so much anymore.
It's actually kind of nice. I feel like it's bookending the Cold War here, basically. We've got the beginning and towards the end, I guess. And so that it's like that particular type of paranoia is being on display here.
Yeah. It's crazy that the film we're talking about, The Manchurian Candidate, which is, you know, chiefly concerned with just crazy, just really out there Cold War paranoia, came out during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It came out in late October 1962.
Oh, wow. So people were primed to be freaking out.
Yeah. It was real, and you know they didn't know that was going to happen. And the book that it was based upon came out in like 1959, I think. So it just turned out to be like, wow, that's some good. Hey, want to get real freaked out? Go check out The Manchurian Candidate, not your Cineplex.
I feel like so many Cold War, either just real life things or like media during it, informed a lot of particular TNG, you know. Episodes. So you know, that could be a whole like, you know, thesis from our show is like looking at the Cold War stuff.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of me. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. So let's do that, and we will do that in a little bit. Did you know? Let's talk a little bit of news. I know that we need to. You have a hard out, so we have to hurry. But let's talk real fast about William Shatner, who, as we know, went to space on a Blue Origin flight a little while ago. And he has now announced that he will be starring in an Amazon original documentary, Shatner in Space, about his trip to space, and also just, of course, his position as the chief American spaceman still on Earth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. That makes, you know, the PR move of bringing him along, like, comes full circle, you know, and we make a little documentary about it, or, you know.
Yeah, it does. It also answers a big question for me, which was, you know, we heard from Tom Hanks that Tom Hanks got the offer to go on the ride, and it would have cost him like $26 million. And Tom Hanks is like, you know how many typewriters I can afford with $26 million? I think I'll stay on the Earth. But I was like, does Shatner have $26 million? Like, how did he afford that? And the answer is, no, he was cast in this.
Yeah.
If anything, he's getting paid to do this.
Oh, what? So they couldn't... Like, they could make a Tom Hanks movie?
Well, I think that's, you know, when you think about Tom Hanks and his history at the Cineplex, I think it was a similar move. Although, yeah, maybe they were going to charge him that much. I don't know the details. I doubt they'll be in the documentary, but it does seem like whether it's Shatner or Tom Hanks, Amazon can say, did Virgin send Jim Lovell to space? Did Virgin send Captain Kirk to space? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Blue Origin did.
Why would you charge Tom Hanks? I don't get that.
Well, he's definitely got the money.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know what kind of, I mean, William Shatner has been, he was living in his car, you know, after Star Trek came out, I guess. But since then, he has worked almost nonstop. And then, of course, he's got Priceline money and maybe some good investments. But, man, I can't imagine that he'd be worth $30 million.
No.
But if he is, good for him.
Yeah, he's never seemed like someone who's, like, scraping by or anything. But, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe just because I I see him so much Priceline, I'm thinking this guy's got to stay working,
Yeah. I mean, I guess if Flo goes up on the next flight from Progressive, then we've got our answer.
There we go. Yeah, let's get Jake up there.
Yeah, right. And Kaylee Cuoco and J. Jonah Jameson as well.
The cavemen.
Yeah, right. If the cavemen come out of the pod next time, then we've got our answer. The fix is in. Well, let's transition from talking about America's greatest Cold War space hero to our featured subject for this week's episode. The Cold War, I think it was probably bad for humanity, but it was good for the movie business.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the Cineplex is dominated by low-budget horror flicks and big-budget superhero epics, but in ages past, movie audiences were captivated by the political thriller, which invariably featured a man of the West playing a deadly game of cat and mouse with his Eastern Bloc counterparts, the fate of the free world hanging in the balance. Cold War political films were versatile because they could be set anywhere that the ideals of capitalism clashed with those of collectivism, i.e., anywhere on Earth, from the cities of Europe to the wastes of the Middle East, even to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. With the putative end of the Cold War in 1991, the appeal of the classic Cold War thriller began to wane, but one director in particular, John Frankenheimer, had made a name for himself as a crafter of taut, it-could-happen-here narratives, and his arguably most memorable film shone a light on how paranoia could pervert the political process. What if communist mind control could make a war hero the most dangerous threat to democracy, is the question asked by the Manchurian Candidate.
That's true. But I think they're low key worried about some other things in the movie too.
I think so. I think a lot of things are going on in this film, and it's John Frankenheimer as a director has directed serious stuff. He's directed kind of schlocky stuff. He's directed kind of action stuff. And this kind of, I think for 1962, this kind of hits the bullseye, in between all three of those things. Although it is definitely, it's based on a kind of a potboiler book. And I think it's a little bit histrionic in its assumptions. I mean, it is fiction, but the idea that the Chinese and the Russians are working together and they developed a secret mind control program that can make, people do whatever you tell them to do. That's pretty paranoid.
Right, it is. And I guess, I was sort of thinking that comes off sort of by the end as a given. What if they could do this? It's not really it's not fully I don't know. It doesn't question the fear of communism. You know what I mean?
Right.
In fact, if anything, if it's the right wing is too paranoid, it's their control is by the communists too, you know what I mean? So
right.
I can see that, but at the same time, then I think how paranoid that comes off actually works within the realm of what the movie is. The vibe of the movie, I guess, is even the movie's a little freaked out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. It presents. We've got a sleeper spy for the Eastern Bloc. That's bad news, but it also presents a kind of cynical look at the politics of Washington as well. Not just with Angela Lansbury's character, who is the real sleeper agent, but also the sort of opposite side of the aisle. Senator Jordan is presented as kind of a nice guy, but also totally willing to to launch a political vendetta, on this guy that he doesn't like. And you see this kind of horse trading at this party scene where Angela Lansbury goes to him and he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to destroy you. And it's like, geez, I hope our legislators are making like more sober decisions than based on like, you snubbed me at a party one time.
I think there's probably cases of that happening. Sure.
There definitely are. No. I mean, it's absolutely like, I would hope that in a movie where Frank Sinatra is like this, square jawed hero of the Korean War, but the movie is not necessarily presenting that. It could have been totally histrionic. The Russians are coming. And it's played it totally straight, but it's a little more cynical in its presentation of this situation.
It's sort of got that vibe of like it shows, American politicians being corrupt and stuff like that. But it's kind of in the way of you see certain things now where it's like you see corrupt stuff that goes on in America now, and they go like, what are we, a bunch of communists? And it's like stuff that we just already do, that's bad. Yeah. So it does sort of have that a little bit. It's kind of fun, actually, though.
And Angela Lansbury, her motivations are also very personal. We assume at some point either it's money or it's just glory, or maybe she really is, like maybe she herself was mind controlled or is a zealot for the communist cause. But it does become personal for her at the end when she was nominated for an Academy Award for this performance, and I think it's totally deserved.
But
when
awesome.
when she's talking to Raymond at the end, and she's like, I said I'd do anything for them to send me like an assassin, and they sent me you, and so for that reason we're going to do what they asked us to do, but then I'm going to do everything I can to destroy them. So she's using her senator husband as a McCarthy-esque type figure to create paranoia and to get power. But presumably after that, she would really go on like a real McCarthyist kind of tear and try to weed out all the communists, because she's going to like flip the tables on them. Like everybody's trying to screw each other.
So yeah, in a way it is sort of like showing that like the paranoia just drives literally everyone insane,
Yeah. What happened to the political thriller? Like Tom Clancy just makes video games now, right? Like, I mean, it used to be that the political thriller is like what you went to at the box office in the 60s and the 70s with like Robert Redford films, and the 80s with, Jack Ryan films, and the 90s. And now all we've got now is James Bond, and he's just a superhero, essentially.
Yeah.
He is just killing rich white guys, basically.
Yeah, there's occasionally like I feel like will be something in that of that ilk, but it never really approaches anything like this for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. People are still pretty freaked out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, but we're at a sort of I'm not sure how we got here necessarily. Like we definitely bombed the living hell out of the Middle East, but I think if you set a movie or a book or something in the Middle East where, terrorists are the bad guys, like, what is this, 2002? Like, you can't get away with that anymore.
Well, that's, we sort of talked about how, like, the context has changed from then and now when we did, The Day the Earth Stood Still. But I think, I think the remake of Manchurian Candidate kind of shows, like, that off as well. It's because in that, it's like, it's another thing where it's like, no, we can't. It's like we can't project things about our enemies and like what we're gonna fight. It's more turning it in on ourselves, similar to how Day the Earth Stood Still was like, actually, what if we're just like a bunch of pathetic losers, In the remake of Manchurian Candidate, they're like, there's no like outside like communist force, it's corporations and stuff like that, and like the security state. So I guess like you still like actually like the paranoia and stuff, like there's still plenty of that to go around. You just can't really do it for a like outside enemy,
That's interesting. And you did the extra credit. I didn't watch the remake.
I did.
I guess I should have, based on our conversation about A Day the Earth Stood Still. But I think that is that's a good way to take it. If you were, say, to remake this movie, which has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, I don't know why they remake classic movies, but if you're going to update the terms for the new millennium, then yeah, the focus that you said that it has is the way to go. The only problem is, movies are created by capital, so the master's tools are never going to take down that house. And so can a film, how do you think that it accomplished its goal then? I think personally a film would never really go far enough into those issues.
I think it actually does a pretty good job. I mean, I don't know if a movie is ever going to, shake our foundation or anything, but I think it does a pretty good job because the premise in that is instead of like the communists, you have like this Manchurian company, and they've developed like this tech. They show a little bit of the tech, and it's the same thing. Like it follows a lot of the similar beats, but instead they kind of just focus instead of in this original movie. There's like different characters kind of get a lot more focus, whereas they put it really all more on the Frank Sinatra character in Denzel in the remake, and it's like they really just focus on it's sort of about like he's got Gulf War syndrome, that type of thing, but it's also like they have like security state kind of watching him, and it's all like the corporations are controlling who is it, Helen Mirren in that one,
Meryl Streep. Oh
yeah, sorry. I confused them for some reason.
Yeah,
but yeah, she's like playing that role, and it's a thing where she's, kind of, I wouldn't say as controlled by them. She's more like in cahoots with the corporation, And I don't know. I think it's a good.
That's interesting. So I guess I have to watch it then. But like, did the political thriller then evolve very briefly into the surveillance state thriller? With movies like this and with like Enemy of the State and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that vibe for sure.
But then disappeared almost completely because we don't even see those movies anymore.
No.
Probably because all the companies that are harvesting all of our data are like, don't make movies like that. We're taking all that data.
Right. No, now it's Peter Parker just has like sunglasses that can call in a drone strike, and that's actually like fun and cool.
Yeah. That's the thing that we want to get. Yeah.
Yeah, I think The Day the Earth Stood Still, the remake it's right on that border of when those movies started. Because I feel like the end, I think it's the start of the Obama administration. It's like, okay, well, you can't think about this stuff as bad anymore, Right. Like even
take the drones away from the guy from Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, I honestly think even if people like kind of in their hearts like know all that stuff, like the Patriot Act stuff is like wrong and bad and stuff like that, like they just don't want to think about it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's why it's disappeared.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, I wish I had done all my homework then, because that would have.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to flex on you.
Of a very good conversation. I will say that Liev Schreiber's good casting, because this guy looks kind of like Liev Schreiber.
Yes.
He?
Yes,
the guy that plays Raymond Shaw in the original movie. He's got a little Jason Isaacs. Maybe it's just the accent.
The problem, sort of, in the remake is that like there's not as much focus on him. Like there are still all the kind of key beats with him, but not like they don't really focus on his character as much.
Yeah,
and I kind of like that in the original one. Like you really feel like the mommy issues. It's like actually that's like the key, like paranoia is like, what if mommy issues could corrupt the whole nation,
What if daddy issues could? We just lived through 4 years of that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Lawrence Harvey, of course, plays Raymond Shaw, and he's really great in this as well. And it's interesting because, like I mentioned before, like the book is a lot more pulpy, and there is, that weird kiss between him and his mother.
Yeah.
In the end of the film, but in the
weird.
book, they actually have a relationship, a sexual relationship.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, I got to read this book, but
so weird. There's something going on there. You know what I mean? Like it adds an extra layer of like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, I should mention too, while we're talking about cast members, of course Janet Leigh is in this, and she's great, but like feels really like stuffed into this. It's almost like, boy, if Frank Sinatra doesn't have sex with somebody, like we're gonna wonder about this guy. He sure talks to his old friends a lot,
Yeah.
and so just to fulfill part of the you got to have snappy dialogue with a dame. They kind of cram her into this movie. She's not really important at all. In the book, I think she's actually her ex-fiance was like part of the intelligence community or something, like she has some connection to what's going on.
Yes, they do that. That's happens in the remake. They make her like FBI or whatever,
okay,
and she's watching him. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll also mention that Josie, the love interest for Raymond Shaw, is played by Leslie Parrish, who, of course, appeared in the TOS episode, Who Mourns for Adonias.
Nice. I like the alum crossovers.
So,
Always
Star
good.
Trek connection there. And then Henry Silva plays Chunjin. Henry Silva it's interesting. He's a long... running, he's got character actor. He's been in a ton of stuff. He is not Oriental at all. He is not Asian. He is of Sicilian and Spanish descent.
Wow.
So he is just doing yellowface. It's unfortunate, but he did go on to a long career in films and still around today at the age of 93.
Oh, right on.
But this is the time that you could get away with like, this guy's got dark hair. He'll just be the guy from Korea.
Yeah, it's a little weird. For sure.
And it is weird because they definitely got like a ton of actors of color for the other scenes, like the brainwashing scene and stuff like that. So just go that like extra.
They were just like, this is the right guy for the job.
Yeah.
He's the most qualified. Yeah.
So that's another reason that you might want to remake the movie, to kind of get rid of some of the more problematic aspects of a film made in 1962.
Yeah. Just throw John Voight in there. You're good.
It's weird because this, of course, came out in John Voight. God, this came out in 1962. Kennedy, of course, alive when the movie comes out. Not alive when the movie is still kind of hanging out in the second-run theaters. And the movie did. There was a rumor, long-standing rumor, that the movie was pulled when that happened, but that is not true. It did actually get a little bump, but not much of one. People kind of saw it out of interest, but your president dies, Camelot is killed in front of you. Nobody really wants to go see the Manchurian Candidate.
It's kind of wild too, just that this movie is about like a really wild, like unbelievable assassination, like it just fits in so well.
The movie, it's so tough because I was not alive at this time. And so I only like absorb or have an idea of this period through the fiction made about this period.
Yeah.
The Day the Earth Stood Still, movies like 13 Days or The Hunt for Red October, all the Tom Clancy books that I've read. And so I don't know how accurately the film, I suppose it's fiction, so it's not accurate to reality, but how accurately it portrays people's ideas about the Cold War and about like the Soviets and the Chinese at the time. It definitely wants to, sort of make light or be satirical. I'm thinking about like when the doctor from the Pavlov Institute comes to the U.S. to check on Raymond, and he's like, he looks good. I'm going to go to Macy's. I love buying things in your capitalist stores and stuff like that,
It has some fun with it, yeah.
Or later when Islin and Angela Lansbury are trying to figure out how many communists are actually in the Senate or Washington, and he's putting ketchup on his steak like an asshole. And he's like, 57. There are 57 communists.
He's like adding amounts as it goes on.
It's kind of making fun of both sides, but probably as much as it could get away with in 1962.
That's why I don't want to like oversell how much I was saying it was like specifically afraid of communists. It's definitely like a little tongue in cheek too,
Yeah.
Which is kind of what makes it like, I don't know, it's kind of fun to watch it that way, because there's like there's an elevated kind of reality to it. So like,
Yeah, for sure.
like I really love the scene where they're like switching back and forth during the brainwashing sessions. Like,
Yeah.
that felt so good to watch. I like it felt so like the heightened reality, but it felt so natural too. Like, I don't know. It's comparing that to like anything, you know, it's like very dramatic, you know, in like the remake, they did it very dramatically and stuff, and it's cool. But I was watching this and I was like, this feels, I don't know, it feels so like fanciful, you know, like, or so like fantasy, but at the same time like natural.
Yeah, the way that they're all thinking, you know, seeing this ladies' luncheon or whatever, and then it's sort of like switching back and forth with the backdrop, but also sometimes the brainwasher is speaking, and sometimes it's the lady speaking. There was one moment where I think you have to give like 1962 woke points, but it comes off really strange when we're in the nightmare of the African American member of the unit, and he's having the dream, and he sees everybody as like old black ladies in the audience, and it was like, good job, like going out and getting a bunch of old black ladies and, you know, giving them jobs and stuff like that. But like, why does it have to be specifically through his point of view? It's a little separate but equal in my mind.
Were they thinking just like, oh, he would feel more comfortable here or something like that?
If they had, I suppose, or it's just like seeing it through your experiences in your mind, I guess. Like, the hypnotic trigger wasn't specific. If they had went one more where there was like an Asian guy or like a Jewish guy seeing a bunch of like old Jewish grandmas or something like that,
I've been maybe
just to establish that it's not just like this weird. This movie isn't about like black and white politics. There are plenty of movies in the 60s about that. Like, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, I like the fact that serviceman, that member of the company, was just like another guy. Unfortunately, he kind of disappears from the film after he gets in touch with Marco, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, I thought they would do more with, I guess that ended up happening in the remake. I thought they would do a lot more with like sort of like having like the flashbacks of the war and stuff like that. And I guess you did have, you know, Frank Sinatra's like freaking out the whole movie and sweating all over. So I guess that's that. I wouldn't say they like, I wouldn't say they didn't sort of hit on that. Maybe I'm just thinking like, because I was sort of expecting is something they kind of did in the remake, but I kind of just expected it in the original is for it to be less of like, for that to just be more overt, you know, like them to be talking about that. But I don't know, was that something that was being talked about yet? Like the idea of like, you know, war flashbacks like that. I don't know.
I don't think so. I was watching this with my girlfriend as we were watching it. She's like, did they have a word for PTSD?
Right. Yeah. That's what I was sort of wondering too.
And obviously, you know, the soldiers of World War I were shell-shocked, but as far as it being codified, like scientifically, I think that, the science was very, very young in that respect. But that is really what's going on here. I don't know what they did in the Denzel Washington film, but that is definitely an element that you would want to play up, you know, in a modern interpretation of this. I
guess I was thinking that's something maybe that you started to see more of with like Apocalypse Now, like that era of movies. Yeah. Of like, you know, him freaking out in his hotel room.
Because this is all, pre-Vietnam. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So this is like still early on in the Cold War, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's still pretty hardcore, though. I mean, there are one criticism I guess I'd have of the film is the sort of tone swings. I mean, it's okay to be very funny and very serious in equal measure, but the way that the movie sort of lurches around between those, the whole middle part, and like I like Janet Leigh, but like all the parts with her aren't really all that important. And then we get to the point where we're figuring out, like, you know, the movie flashes back to Raymond's time when he met Josie when he was younger, before he joined the army. And that sort of like throws everything. I mean, you need that information, but it kind of throws things off. And so the movie kind of wanders around until it gets to the third act. And the third act is just like you're holding your breath for like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
But up to that point, it's a little rough. But there's funny things in this. And then there's like hardcore things in this. Like for a 1962 film, you know, a American serviceman strangling another guy to death, like in front of everybody. Or when he shoots what's his name when he shoots the young guy in the unit, Bobby Lembeck, and he just gets blown backwards and blood splatters all over the picture of Mao. It's like, whoa.
I thought that was wild. And I sort of liked, I don't know, I thought the tonal swings kind of worked, like, even just thinking of that scene I mentioned earlier, like, where it is this really weird scene, but it's also like, it is funny where they're like, all right, strangle him. And they're like, yes, ma'am. You know, like, I don't know. I thought, I thought the tonal shifts in it worked well for, I guess, the type of movie it was or what they were going for. And like the Janet Leigh scenes were they're kind of weird to me, like, but I kind of liked them because like the way they talked, like the way she was like asking him to like remember her address or whatever it was, I felt like she was like trying to activate him or something, like, and right, the way the repetition and everything. And so and having her do that it contributes to the atmosphere of paranoia. But if it doesn't like go anywhere, you kind of wonder, you're left feeling like, well, why did that really happen? You know what I mean? That's why I think, like you said with the remake, having her, you know, their relationship can be authentic, but having her have some kind of connection or some kind of interest in it, I think makes more sense. It gives her more of a reason to be around. You know, maybe she does approach him on the train, and it is at the behest of, you know, the FBI because she's supposed to be following this guy, but she's also like, this guy's not doing well. I should go talk to this guy, see what's up. Yeah. I sort of liked, I actually do think that made it feel a little bit nicer, but I kind of liked how it was sort of like, it's like another thing to be paranoid about, but it was kind of, I don't know. I like that it wasn't, it makes the paranoia more like, like sometimes you're just freaked out about something, but it's not real. You know, the threat's not real. Yeah. You know, it was nice for once for it to like, or like it makes sense, you know, like where you're just like, everything is a threat. So like, but some things aren't, but you're still going to be freaking out about them, I guess.
Yeah. The idea of a, speaking of unreality, the idea of a populist candidate who rises to power thanks to, you know, the exploitation of people's paranoia. I wonder how that felt in 1962. If that felt like, oh boy, I'm glad this is just a movie because, you know, feels a little different in this day and age.
There's like little pieces of various characters who like, maybe I'm just projecting, but I guess it's supposed to be a, you know, a commentary, but it's also like, I don't know. I get that when we watch some of these movies sometimes, like we had that with Time Cop, where it's like, where now we live in the world that's like more absurd than like the political satire a little bit.
Right. Yeah, Jean-Claude, you got to go back one more time and fix things. You didn't finish the whole thing. Ron Silver's in charge now.
Oh my gosh.
Should they have picked a less common trigger than the Queen of Diamonds? Because that seems to like be almost comical in the way that he keeps running into this specific trigger he's supposed to have, his safe word.
You know, it's I feel bad keep bringing this up, but it's even worse in the remake actually, where it's just their names.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
But I don't think there's ever an accidental trigger. So that's what's funny about it, is it's just them, like, their, like, full army title, I think, or, like, their full name and army title is really what gets it. And, but it never, like, it never matters, I don't think. Like, they never get, like, burnt on accident, like in this.
Well, every time they mustered, they'd be brainwashed, right? Like, they would just...
I guess so. Maybe you just have to say it in a certain, you know, tone.
I suppose.
But yeah,
I don't know how you'd update it. Why don't you pass the time with a game of Candy Crush, and then, you know, maybe.
Yeah, there's no gaming in this one. That was kind of a bummer. Yeah, I don't know. I did like. I think it was a good. The Queen was a good, like. It's a good, like, movie trigger because there's a lot of. I mean, we see it in the movie, and I guess that explains what you're saying too, of like how easily you could come across it, but it's really easy to like portray on film or whatever.
It's Oedipal too, probably, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Queen, yeah.
And
it also sort of like it kind of brings to mind the idea of, this is a game that they're playing. I mean, obviously lives are at stake, but for the people in charge, for the people like the brainwashing guy, like he's just happy to play this game, like this game of espionage.
Yeah.
But solitaire is a game where you play yourself.
Whoa. I never even thought about that. One thing I really liked about it was how, like, he tried to deprogram him, and it was like, I'm going to show you a shitload of these cards at once. That'll break you of it.
Yeah. There's a famous, so I can't remember the first time I saw this movie, but I've seen it a couple times, and I noticed again this time that in that scene where he's confronting Raymond with all the with the stacked deck, Frank Sinatra's his shot is like slightly out of focus, and it really bothers me. And I looked up like what was going on, and apparently this is Sinatra. He won awards or at least lauds for his acting at some times, but he was kind of an inconsistent performer. It just wasn't his thing, really. He was, a singer. And so apparently, like, they did a couple takes, but the first take was the only really good take that he had gotten. And they, for whatever reason, like, didn't have the focus pulled in. And so it's slightly out of focus.
Oh,
and people have kind of retconned it as like, no, that's like, that's Raymond seeing him, things aren't in focus. They're not clear. And it's like, yeah, it's a nice headcanon, but I'd fire that the focus puller, or tell him to sit back. He's too close to the camera.
Yeah.
I also think it's a little intense, that, he just blows his brains out at the end. That's another thing I wouldn't expect to see in a movie from 1962.
Yeah, definitely. It shocked me for sure. It was a great just way that all led up to the ending was really well done. Yeah,
it's really tense, and that's the kind of tension that I think Frankenheimer was really great at, and only got better as his film career went on. The one thing that I would say, and I'm not here to bury this movie, but like I do want to fix it, and I don't know if it had just ended right there. Fine, right? But instead they tag on this little coda where Frank Sinatra is sort of like, contemplating what happened to his friend and what went wrong. And it seems like the whole movie has been, it almost seems like a studio note to me. Like the whole movie has been like questioning this great game between the Western and Eastern powers. And then there's this coda where he's like, oh, soldiers, they do this, they give their lives. Aren't the soldiers great?
Right. Yeah, it's very... I guess that then does bring it back around that it is like a, feel bad for the troops type thing.
Well, I do feel bad for them because they're the pawns in this game, but it was almost kind of like, no, don't worry, like this was one little thing. American soldiers still good, definitely should be in Korea.
That's how I felt too at the remake too. It was like kind of dragged on a little bit, and I felt like I do remember with both after like the end there that it should just like it sort of reminded me of the end of what's that one movie we watched, the one we did with the game with Donald Sutherland. I'm blanking on it now.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, I don't know. It reminded me of that, where it has kind of a very abrupt and that is also like a paranoia kind of cynical ending, and I thought that would have worked just great if you just ended it like that. I totally see what you're meaning, where it's like the whole movie feels like that ending, and then it's like we kind of got to tell you how to feel a little bit at the end.
Yeah, of that movie, of course, a sort of ironic reworking of the 1955 movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was chiefly a Red Scare, communist parallel. Whereas, like, compared to that, this, I think, is a little more self-aware. Like, it's telling you this scary story of what the Russians and the Chinese want to do, send brainwashed soldiers over. But I don't think that the movie itself completely believes that. In fact, I think it's more sort of centered on the real bad guys here are Angela Lansbury and Senator Iselin.
Right. Especially, I feel like the guys they show, like the communist guys they show, are like a little cartoony. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. That whole scene in the observation room or the theater is like it's like cut from an Austin Powers movie. Like I wondered when like Frank Drebin was going to break in and like punch everybody.
Right. Yeah. So
it's like the axis of evil.
Yeah, totally. So it does feel a little bit like that element of it is like we're afraid of this, you know, when really like it's Angela Lansbury who's like a monster.
Yeah, she's the real monster. I have a friend who writes political thrillers, and they are set, you know, in this day and age. Like by the time he got started as a writer, he'd always liked political fiction, but like the Cold War was basically over, and so unless he was going to write a period piece, he would have to set his, you know, books in the current day, and so he does write spy thrillers, like in the sort of new reality that we have, the post-Cold War world, and there are no shortage of stages to put your heroes on. I mean, you know, we're definitely America's more at war than it's ever been,
Mm-hmm.
but he talks about how like, yeah, you know, it was a lot easier when you could just have the Ruskies and then, you know, and then the Americans, and it's the CIA versus the KGB, and he has to be very careful to be sensitive and to show that even though, you know, his American hacker spy is like working against like Islamic terrorists or, you know, fringe groups, you know, he tries his best to show kind of like both viewpoints politically,
Mm-hmm.
which is always the best spy fiction always does that. I mean, it always has, whether it's a cynical view or it's just a realistic view, it has a moral grayness, you know, in between the two sides.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just in general too, it's more fun that way. But yeah, even with like the ideas you're trying to get across too, like it seems like you'd have to do that.
Although James Bond movies are pretty fun, and you know, the Russians they employ people with steel teeth and
That's
stuff
true.
like that. Like they're always generally the bad guys.
So we should just do the reverse now, because like America is like, you know, like doing weird destabilizing stuff to other countries. Like just write a book about someone somewhere else trying to stop the CIA or whatever. That could be fun.
But then you get like, then you have to cast Billy Zane in your movie. Remember that movie that came out like a while ago, and it was like from the perspective of like the Iraqi army, and like Billy Zane played this like, you know, insane like American military commander who was like killing everybody.
Yeah.
He was like the monster. Yeah.
Yeah, it would not be. I guess we're probably not capable of making that movie. I'm sure elsewhere has, though. Like a foreign film probably does that a lot better.
Well, I guess I'd like to see that if somebody makes a film like that, and check that out. Anything else that you can think of to say about this? I worry that we've done this short shrift, because this is thought of as a classic film. It's Criterion. It's, you know, in the Library of Congress or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't. The more the years go on and the more I watch it, the more it feels kind of like a quaint period piece.
I mean, I honestly loved it as much as like we were kind of like,
yeah, I like it too. Yeah.
It like I was thinking about what you're saying about the out of focus shot. It's funny like that. It is hard to like think about something like that, because there are so many shots in this that feel like really intentionally crafted and like really are awesome. So it is funny. Like I could see how, because of that, you could either be like, this shot like has to mean something, or be like disappointed that it's a weird shot. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And Frankenheimer, it like, one of my favorite parts is when, Iceland, you know, grandstands at the Senate hearing, and we're seeing him yell, and then we're seeing Angela Lansbury next to the TV, and so we're seeing just the Secretary of State on the TV, and then the senator yelling, and it's like this emphasis of, this is of course like just 2 years after the big televised debate where JFK trounced Nixon because he didn't sweat as much or whatever, and so I feel like that's a commentary on, you know, the way that TV and the ability to reach a bunch of people at once has affected the political process, which we are now it's the internet. Like, we know that lesson today, but that was still kind of a new lesson back then. So I think it's important, but it's also kind of quaint. Like, you're like, oh, you're scared of TV? Wow.
True. Yeah, I think it definitely comes off as like a little bit of a quaint period piece, but I also think like the farther we get away from it, the more it holds up as just like this great encapsulation of the paranoia of that time, you know? Like, when I was talking about, like, is the movie actually afraid of communists or whatever? It, like, it ultimately doesn't matter, because I think even if it, like you were saying, it's not, like, maybe that's not how everyone felt about it at the time, it definitely does show a slice of, like, just how insane some of the paranoia, you know, from that time comes off.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, Frankenheimer, you know, would go on to make a lot of great movies. He made one of my favorite movies, in 1998, which is a spy movie. It's called Ronin, and it's set in that world, in the world of the post-Cold War, and it's about a bunch of spies who now no longer have a country to, you know, fight and spy for, and about them sort of trying to stay alive and like find jobs and you know, do work in this new world that was always morally gray but is now free of ideology as well.
Wow, that sounds sweet. I didn't know he was still making them that late.
Yeah, there are no Star Trek episodes based on that film, so I don't think we can ever watch it, but it's a really good film.
I might have to get that one. I would love to see that.
Well, I think that we have done everything we could for the Manchurian Candidate here, so let's take a break for a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more backtracking.
I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay. Every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Ready or midships, steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. The stories of Star Trek are set in the future, but they're tied inexorably to the present in which they were written. When Gene Roddenberry created the Starship Enterprise and Captain Kirk, he envisioned a future that was free for all men thanks to the triumph of Western liberal ideals. When Star Trek was rebooted in the 1980s, Gene and the co-creators of The Next Generation didn't tamper with the formula much, and why would they? The Cold War, then cooler than ever, was still on, and perennial foes like the Klingons and Romulans still stood in well for our eternal foes in the East. As perestroika and the fall of the Soviet Union changed the international political climate, so too did Trek's attitudes towards its longtime villains. But there's no shortage of Trek stories from the 90s that insinuate that certain factions in the 21st century would relish a return to familiar conflicts. And we see those factions make a puppet of Geordi LaForge in the 4th season TNG episode, The Mind's Eye.
Romulan target, Geordi LaForge.
He has no choice but to see what I wish him to see.
They're programming him to sabotage the Federation.
Do not attempt to leave orbit.
You speak as if we are enemies and not allies.
And brainwashing him into a ruthless assassin.
Data, we have a known spy on board.
I want you to kill him.
Mind control on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And this is an episode, you cannot say anything about it. It is specifically the director, David Livingston, longtime Trek director, has said, this is my homage to the Manchurian Candidate.
I mean, it's so clear. But I mean, it's great. It's a great...
Yeah.
Like, we've watched plenty of things like that where it's like clearly they're just like, let's do this. But that's why I think it's great, and why we're doing a show about it. I think it's usually awesome. You know, that's what's fun about Star Trek is like, yeah, let's do this movie. Sure.
And as an hour episode, they strip out all the things that they don't need, and surprise, surprise, Janet Leigh's gone.
Right, sure.
Although the sort of premise of this whole thing is that Geordi's on his way to Ryza, and he has been given like these fake memories of Ryza, and he talks about a woman that he met there. And it made me think, ooh, what if Janet Leigh like never existed in the Manchurian Candidate? What if she was like some kind of conditioning? If you remade it for a third time now in the 21st century, you'd have to put that sort of like what is reality type thing in there.
Yeah, it'd be like it'd be like in Joker, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
Spoilers for Joker. Yeah,
sorry. Yeah. I think they do that though.
Well, don't do that now, because don't copy Joker. But that's what I'm saying, though. Joker is the kind of level that I would expect a third remake of the Manchurian Candidate
right.
to be. They would absolutely do that.
Which feels like a copy of something else. Yeah. So
I love the fact that we see Jordy's such a nerd, and I think that's why the people that like him really like him. But he's bored, and he's taking this long car ride, and so he's like, "Computer, what you thinking about?" And they start playing a nerd game where he has to guess all the science answers to
worst
questions.
Game. Oh my god! But it does this is one of those ones where you're like, man, there just should have been. They really kind of did Geordi dirty sometimes in this series. Like there should be more episodes where he's just like hanging out and having fun, or like just doing anything.
Yeah, they put him in a funny position where he has to investigate his own subterfuge, so he's going out, he's conditioned, and he is sabotaging things. He's doing the work of these Klingon agents, but then he's on the other side with Data, like trying to figure out what's going on. And that's cool. That's like a cool dramatic irony situation, but it doesn't ever really, I think, pay off.
No, I agree. Yeah.
An interesting way. Yeah. Because what you normally do is he and Data are trying to figure it out. As he's working on it, he realizes that he's the one who's done it. And then like his programming takes over and he knocks out Data or something like that, and it sort of ups the stakes. I like that Data, who is emulating in a lot of ways his hero Sherlock Holmes, is like doing all the stuff, and he's the one that figures it out. But it just sort of like tortures Geordi, sets him up as the thing, and then he just is around for the rest of the episode. It doesn't really go back to what he's experiencing until the very end.
I feel like in a similar way too, it does drop that with Worf a little bit too. I thought this was going to be like a lot of episodes we've covered where we go, oh, this is secretly an awesome Worf episode. It like starts off that way with the Klingon guy. You think, oh, this is going to be like really interesting, getting into Worf's like baggage with the discommendation and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
like maybe he's going to have to solve it. And it's like a little disappointing that it's like, oh, Data just figures it out. In fact, like Worf's kind of like not doing a good job. I guess, sometimes Data's just got to figure it out, but
yeah, I think they're
Worf's just along for the ride.
Yeah, I think they're kicking the Worf can down the road because, of course, this season ends with Redemption, where we get to the Klingon Civil War, and so they kind of have to remind you that he's discommoded and kind of keep that going. But yeah, Worf doesn't get enough to do.
I do think Data, though you were talking about him emulating Sherlock Holmes. I think in general, like Brett Spiner's acting is really awesome in those scenes because you do like it helps with like the music and the editing and everything. Like there is that same kind of intensity at the end, but I think he kind of portrays that too, like a little bit of like, I don't know, there's some like anxiety about him, even though Data, is kind of also having to be like emotionless. I think he does both at the same time in a weird way.
Yeah.
Especially when he's like, detain Geordi. That's an order. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, he sells the urgency of it, but it's not.
Yes, that's it. The urgency. Yeah.
But it isn't emotional, though. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I feel like that's really subtle.
I think Star Trek, this came out in May of 1991. So this is literally, earlier that year, right? Like the attempted coup happened in Russia. The Berlin Wall is down a couple years at this point. So this is literally happening at the end of the Cold War. And scripts are written over the course of many months. And so, if this was based in the idea of a Cold War or the idea of a film that was made in 1962, you can't blame it for looking backwards a little bit. But I think that Star Trek, not only TOS and TNG, but really the entire franchise, has a Cold War problem. I think that the roots of the franchise and the show are so based in this idea of Camelot and American exceptionalism, and not saying we're capitalists, but we're kind of capitalists, right? And spreading democracy and hegemony across the galaxy, and that has never really changed. And I do think that the show does make concessions to multiculturalism, even to other faiths, in a arguably a federation that is mostly secular, respecting other faiths, other cultures, but it's still kind of the same thing. And I think that is very slowly changing on shows like Discovery and Picard, but I think it's still there, especially when Discovery as a show has positioned itself for 4 seasons now as the show that's constantly having the characters remind themselves that they are the Federation and their Starfleet, and they have these values. But those values are still based on a guy who fought in World War II, do you know what I mean? It was a cop in San Francisco. And I wonder what it looks like when the franchise will finally just drop that and try to go full liberal communism and just go the whole way with it. It doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, because Discovery has now jumped to the 32nd century, and they're the exact same as they are in the 24th century.
Right. Yeah, it's based off this. I think Roddenberry's idea is based off of, I think, a lot of people on both sides of the aisle after World War II were like, well, this if we do set up this kind of global liberal capitalist kind of system, it's all right as long as the right people are pulling the levers.
People will be in charge. Yeah.
And that's kind of the assumption of a lot of Star Trek too. Especially I think about when they try to be sort of retrospective about our Cold War enemies, when they do a Borg, a Iborg or whatever. They're sort of well, maybe some of these Borg guys, they're just, it's rarely do they kind of reflect on our actions, and I feel when they do, it's sort of well, we had good intentions,
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you.
And maybe what I'm describing is a boring show, but we're talking about a movie like The Manchurian Candidate and Cold War fiction. Trek is the ultimate Cold War fiction. And it's still going, and it's ironically embraced by all these people who putatively think of themselves as liberals or even leftists, but it's just I just feel that DNA in it so much.
I kind of felt after if you were gonna go forward from something like the classic the 90s era, beyond Deep Space Nine or something like that, you which sort of was reflective about some of Star Trek, I feel you needed to just keep going and just keep kind of disassembling the show.
Yeah.
Going, making it a totally different show. Or my other thing that I've proposed a lot is make a new Star Trek with no baggage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just a clean reboot, not even the same characters or anything. I know they would never do this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's got to be one of the two. I think the problem is we've just got to keep things have to be recognizable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to look like Star Trek and talk like Star Trek.
And even the reboot films, were just I guess they succeeded in let's update Kirk and Spock to the Obama era. They pulled that off, but I'm not happy about that either. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I that thing that you described, I'd like to see that get totally divorced from everything else. But of course, right after DS9, they did Voyager and Enterprise, which were 2 hard turns back into the classic idea of what Star Trek was. So I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, especially kind of what you're talking about with the movies. It's even more so, I think, on this show that's on a streaming service owned by a gigantic corporation. I really doubt we're gonna get, like, there will definitely be stuff that pays lip service to it, but it's never gonna be truly that hard hitting, obviously.
Yeah. And
I mean, stuff slips through the cracks, obviously, but
yeah. And like the new show coming out is Strange New Worlds, which is like literally what happened on the Enterprise before Kirk even got there. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. This episode, though, is funny because it is playing directly into those ideas, it being kind of gloss on the Manchurian Candidate. And you'd think that the whole Federation maps onto America, the Klingons map onto Russia, but it's a little more complicated than that. And in the episode, we've got the Enterprise assisting a Klingon ambassador with a rebellion or possible rebellion on this planet, Krios or whatever. And it gets into like Klingon politics, which we never really dig into all that much outside of the very top, the Chancellor of the High Council, that sort of thing. If the Klingon Empire is an empire, they must have like subjugated species, right? Like planets aren't like states with autonomy in the Klingon Empire. Like the rebellions are crushed, right? Like it's anti-democratic. So why is the Enterprise helping out other than to maintain this treaty? Like this is a total Cold War story where we have to go and like, destroy the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah.
Shouldn't they be helping these rebels? Like, shouldn't they, shouldn't those have been real Federation phaser rifles provided by Federation by Starfleet Intelligence or something like that? Like, why aren't we trying to help these rebels out here? If this is their Afghanistan, we should be creating space Osama bin Laden on Krios.
Right. Yeah. That's what. Yeah. I think. That's the thing they always do is they will shy away from it a little bit.
They grind all the edges off the politics.
Yeah, maybe that's actually bad to do. I don't know.
It's totally bad because that's what we're talking about. It's just the presumption that like our political aims are of course the correct ones, and so if we decide to help out our friends, the Klingons, to pulverize a rebellion of people who clearly have they clearly have wants and needs here that aren't being met.
Mm-hmm. I don't. Well, yeah, you just couldn't really probably pull it.
What's
off
the next? Is the next episode going to be the World Bank or the Galactic Bank episode or something?
Right. Yeah. That again, what I was thinking about with when they have the martial law on Earth, and Sisko's friend is like, he just he has the best intentions. It's never like. Yeah, it's never like he just wanted power or whatever.
Right.
Or I don't know. That's just always, I guess, kind of the issue. Not that it's not a fun, compelling story anyway, but
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't I don't like a lot of the presumptions that are made politically, mostly because Star Trek is it's built to challenge those presumptions. Like every week the Enterprise goes to a planet and they go, okay, so here's the metaphor, like this is this is that. And everybody thinks like, oh, this is the way that things should run. But clearly it's not working. There's a conflict. And then we realize, oh, if we give them this, which represents something else in our world, then everybody's happy. But like, there's just like this weird, Picard never even bothers to question like if they're doing the right thing or not.
I feel like they do sometimes. The show got better a little bit at that. Like, cause I always thought about,
especially when the Bajorans come on board.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, I always think of in the first season, there's like that drugs episode. And there's a scene where Picard kind of gives Crusher like a little prime directive speech. And it sort of feels like, he believes that, but it also is clearly just like the show saying like, this is the right thing to do. And it's kind of frustrating when it's like, there's so many kind of critiques you could lob at it. And I think the show gets better at portraying it as this is what Picard, the character, believes and not TNG, the show. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he like loves the rules. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, he'll break them sometimes, but.
At its best, it does that, but
Yeah.
a lot of times it's just Space West Wing.
Yes, I can agree with that for sure. I think Deep Space Nine gets better at it, but even then it has its flaws.
Yeah. Yo, is this racist? They can just put a visor on another black guy and everybody's like, oh yeah, Geordie LaForge, I saw him at Ryza.
I thought about that.
Should I be offended by that?
Well, the reason I thought about it was because if it was like set now, like, and there, or like even, I don't know, 30 years ago, and it was like people aren't like checking in that hard, but I feel like they have to have like pretty advanced stuff where if they wanted to like double check this later, especially after they found it out, like they could easily access some database that's got like a video feed or, you know what I mean? Like there has to be some evidence that you could easily look at and go, that's clearly not him.
There's some kind of symposium. Like if they had just had him go on a vacation, it'd be one thing, but he's going there early to party and then he's going to go to this science thing. And he's the chief engineer of the flagship of the Federation.
Oh, I didn't even think
about that. People are going to know who this guy is.
Right.
Did he give lectures? Like what happened?
That's true. It was a really funny gag when they put on the little visor and they're like, all right, great. Like they made sure to like show him what was happening for some reason. Yeah. I mean, just for the camera.
And they show the other actor's face, like at least say that you gave him like plastic surgery or show the back of his head or have LeVar
Burton do it.
A double. Yeah, right. But they're just for the audience, they're like, people get it. We shaved this white guy's head. He's Captain Picard. Get out there, guy.
It'd be really funny if they did that with Data and like a guy just comes out painted white.
That's his stand-in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you now. This is a great episode, though. It's really fun.
It's funny how this, I think, maps really well. They picked like a good movie to turn into a Star Trek episode because you've got the political situation. You've got a character like Geordi who has this specific thing. They, can show him images that are horrifying. They show him Adam Sandler movies, and then he's kind of under their control. And then they go to another thing where it's like, okay, now do this, and he kills quote unquote O'Brien. And it's like a training simulation, because it's in the holodeck and like all these things, work really well.
I feel like because it's trimmed down to, it feels like so much more tense, like the whole time,
Right. Yeah.
Especially they have like nice little touches of it's a little ridiculous, but I love it. Of like, okay, they do the test with O'Brien, and then they go to him in 10 forward, and O'Brien's there.
Right.
And it's like, oh no.
Is that his target?
Yeah. That'd be great if his target was O'Brien. Or like
if it was DS9, that would have been his target. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Actually, didn't this happen to O'Brien in DS9? Like
they put him in the mind prison. Yeah.
Well, there was one where they made there was a clone of O'Brien, and like he was supposed to do something or spy on something on the station, and like everybody knew that he was fake. They were pretending that he was the real O'Brien, and then later at the end, like
yes. Yeah. Oh god, they cloned there was like duplicate O'Briens so many episodes also.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, they do like Geordi setting up the phaser to like test it, and you're like, ah.
Right, yeah. They're always shooting phasers in engineering, which is weird.
I love that.
Troy's in this episode. That's good. It's kind of dumb that she can't sense anything was wrong, but I guess that's how brainwashing works. But I did like the fact that once all this shit goes down, like he ends up in the counsel's office. Like that's, and she's going to help him try to recover his memories and like get over this traumatic experience that happened. I guess Frank Sinatra had Janet Leigh. I don't know if they believed in. You never see Frank Sinatra go to a psychiatrist, to tell you that much. But I like the fact that they use that part of their world and their show where it should have been used.
Yeah, and especially because you kind of got to see him have got to see him kind of have interactions like all over the place. Like in the beginning, he's just like chilling. Then you have sort of like her talking to him when he's like kind of elated after coming back, and then you go to that in the end, and I don't know, that really like that has done more for Geordi than like most episodes I've seen of him.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've watched all of TNG, so I can't very well chart the rehabilitation of Geordi's character or the degradation of his character. I can't remember if he gets better or worse as the show goes on, but this is a good one for him, though.
Yeah, I always go to the stuff with the Dr. Brahms or whatever. I don't really like that.
Yeah.
But I liked their little, like, when she's like, oh, she's like kind of like flirting with him about what happened, or he's flirting about what he did. He's being coy.
Tell me your fuck story. Come on.
Yeah. I do like he like reveals that he got laid and he goes into his room and she stands there for a moment and like does a and like walks away, and I like how much that pleases her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the twist that the ambassador is the handler, is the bad guy. I think we get used to seeing like kindly Klingons come on board, especially after episodes like Birthright, and seeing Picard get closer to Worf and to Klingons, and then have this guy come on and be like, "Oh, we're going to do what we can," and then later on he's having a little feast of Klingon foods.
That was a great scene. Yeah,
and he's giving Geordi his orders.
I think they're going to like lean a little bit more into his connection or his conversations with Worf there, because I thought it was going to be similar to like where Worf gets really into that investigation in the Drumhead, and I thought it was going to make it seem like this guy is really pushing him to figure this out, and then it would have been a good twist because he's like actually the one doing it, and that's like the perfect cover is that like you're actually the one who is like, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, maybe they didn't want to play that beat again, but maybe having like Worf be involved, and because of Worf's knowledge about the Klingon Empire, like there's something about the ambassador that doesn't sit with him.
Yeah,
and Worf is kind of on his trail. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I was gonna say with the LeVar Burton's little things, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, which is after he spills the drink on O'Brien, and O'Brien's like, "It's okay, I'm gonna go change," and they go to commercial. They have to have him do like a little reaction with the glass where he's like, "Oh, what the heck? I don't know what's going on." But it's
there has to be an easier way.
It's a little overplayed. It's like they have a little bit too much time lingering on him, and I feel like halfway through it, he becomes sort of like comedic because it's like, how long am I supposed to react to this?
It's a little silly, and that's it's funny because we have that in the Manchurian Candidate too. Like there are these really serious scenes, and then there's also like these little like kind of goofy aspects to what's happening, and you're like, wow, okay.
Yeah, they translated that well, I guess.
There's the ending is another example of, and this is maybe a separate conversation from the long political conversation we had about Trek earlier, but like where Captain Picard does the most diplomatic thing of all, nothing, where he's got this guy pinned, and it's like, if we so I know I didn't do it, so it's gotta be you, so we're gonna search you and find the thing and then probably arrest you. But the Klingons are like, no, we won't have that. And so the guy tries to say like, oh, I want asylum. And Picard sends this guy off with the Klingons, knowing they're going to find the thing and knowing they're going to like skin this guy alive. And he's just like, bye, see you around.
Right. And he goes like, we'll give you asylum after like you've been tried for, and he knows,
right?
It's like, no, that's not how it works. That's the opposite.
Right, because you know that guy's not coming back. Like, he needs the asylum right now. Yes, of course, he is a spy, and he's been doing this espionage, but like, if you believe in these Federation ideals, you know the second that transporter beam fades, you're never seeing that guy again. He is not coming back from where he's going.
But at the same time, it was kind of cool.
Oh no, it was awesome. But it's like, it's fine for James Bond to do. In fact, he does that at the end of The Living Daylights. There's this character who's been playing both sides and pretended to be Bond's friend, and then the Russian general who Bond like sort of grudgingly admires shows up, and he's like, all right, take him back to Moscow, put him in the diplomatic bag. And like, that guy knows that he's like fucked, but Bond's like, oh well, see ya.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I think it's something that Sisko can get away with. Like, it works with his character of like, because I was saying earlier, like, Picard normally seems like he loves the rules, you know, unless he gets pushed on something he thinks he like really protests and he makes a big show of it. but normally he would be like, yeah, like, I feel like they just did it to have like a fun ending, because that is a fun moment, because they could also have just been like, yes, you're granted asylum, the end, like, we don't need to see what happens. But it made for a more epic ending.
Yeah. Picard loves the rules, especially when they mean that he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, my hands are tied,
Yep, you can just watch things play out. Yeah.
But I think he could have followed the rules here and, like, well, I guess they're allies with the Klingons. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's definitely a volatile situation, because this guy already, the guy that runs the planet already hates the Federation, and so if Picard puts his foot down, you've got an even bigger problem. But he could have just said, "Gentlemen, let's retire to my ready room. We're going to talk this out." But he's just like, "No, go ahead, take him."
That's one of those ones where it's like they're like, let's just get to the end. What's the coolest way to end this? Because, like,
20 seconds ago, you thought that this guy was like a Klingon ambassador that you could trust, and now it's like, okay, yeah, no, see ya.
Because episode part 2 would be the trial of this guy, and they'd be like, shoot, we don't have any lawyers here. Riker, you're the lawyer.
No, don't give me Riker as a lawyer, please.
Yeah.
He's 0 for 2. Well, they use technology to turn Geordi into an assassin in this episode. Something that makes Trek is the technology of the future, and it facilitates what's going on, but just as often it's the complication that the characters deal with. On every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, we add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode to see how each would be different. We call this our technological exchange, and the list of technologies that we work from goes like this. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And if I roll on my random number selecting technology, I get the number 7, communicators. If communicators, that is Star Trek communicators, existed in the world of the Manchurian Candidate, how would it be different?
Oh, shoot. Well, definitely, that's a good one, actually.
The first thing I can think of is there is a communication-based snag in this movie, especially at the end, where they are waiting to... Marco reprograms Raymond, and he sends him out, and he's waiting for him to call him to let him know, what the plan is. He's going to try to assassinate somebody at the convention, and Raymond never calls. And we find out later why he never calls. But it is 1962, so the only way you can talk to somebody who's not in the room with you is by both parties have to go to a phone. So if he had given him like a communicator or something like that, they could buzz him on the communicator. Also, you can use communicators to locate somebody, so maybe it would complicate the idea of Shaw having to, or Marco having to spot where he is and then, running to get to the place where he is. Maybe they'd be able to get a fix on him.
It's funny because I feel like we see that difference play out in the Star Trek episode, because the communicator is what makes the save. Is Data calling Worf and then Worf calling Picard.
Yeah, you're running ahead, but that is true.
I think that's like weirdly with the ending, at least the answer is that the two things would flip and Geordi would probably kill himself instead. And that'd be interesting.
It's funny how communication is really at the forefront of war and conflict, isn't it? Like you need intelligence. Some of the first they used balloons to get like a view of enemy troop formations before the Wright brothers had even flown at Kitty Hawk. Needing to get information and get it to your superior officers or your commanders is a really important part of war. So I wonder how even like Korea would have changed if they had very advanced communication and not just like radio telephones like they had.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, probably, I don't know, things probably be a lot worse. I would assume.
I know that in the Star Trek episode, it isn't enough to just say that we, conditioned Geordi. That's something else that we never really talked about when we talked about the Manchurian Candidate. But like, we don't see this idea of brainwashing so much in fiction anymore. And I feel like it was a big thing in definitely like the 40s and 50s and 60s. But the idea that like you can hypnotize somebody and they'll do something. Even in Manchurian Candidate, at the very beginning, the brain scientist has to say, I know you've all heard that like a hypnotized patient can't ever be forced to do something they wouldn't normally do, but we've conquered that, you know. So people, that's become, I know I had a hypnotist for my lock-in when I graduated from high school, and of course he said the exact same thing, like, you know, I can't make you do anything that, you know, you wouldn't normally do. So that's in the lore of hypnotism, but yet, like, that's too kitschy, that's too retrograde for the 24th century, I guess. And so they have to say that there's this, they're controlling his actions, you know, through this E-band transmission. If they had Star Trek communicator technology in the era of the 60s, if it would be a similar thing, like they would be literally controlling him with a box with big dials and antenna on it.
I mean, that's sort of, that's just the remake, because they do a brief moment in the remake where they're like, look at this, and they look under a microscope and you see, like, you know, little, I don't know, nanotechnology or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a little bit more, because I feel like in this, or in the original, I actually kind of like it more. It's a bit more magical. You don't really know, really? Like, they don't really explain it, do they? They just say, like,
no, it's just that idea of like mesmerists, you know, at the turn of like the last century. It's everything was I will hypnotize you, I will control you to do something. But I just don't think that really plays. Even in the 60s, I think that was getting kind of played out.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that there's like sort of a magical realism to the movie that I like.
Or like a telepath, you know, would, I suppose in Star Trek could do the same thing.
Yeah, actually.
We're kind of getting into, let's just move into Star Trek. We're kind of getting there already.
Yeah.
So Data can't save the day by calling Worf, first of all.
Yeah, what if they didn't? I guess they have probably done this, but where, like, yeah, someone does something bad against their will, like one of our main characters. That would be kind of cool. Like, Geordi just vaporizes this guy.
Oh, he pulls it off.
Yeah. He totally would. Because that's the thing.
Suppose.
That's actually one thing I was thinking about watching this was, okay, obviously paranoia is a key to even this story. It's definitely key to the Manchurian Candidate. But one thing that's really interesting about this, because the Starfleet aspect is, it also shows how trusting they are. You know what I mean? Like, they do reference, like, yeah, Geordi, he doesn't really have an alibi. He's capable of doing it. Oh my
God. Yeah,
but
every single thing, 3 different times in the episode, like the finger is pointed squarely at Geordi, and everybody's like, "Well, there's nothing we can do with that." So, okay, great.
So maybe
he's like, "Where were you?" "I was all by myself." "All right, that checks out. How about this guy?"
Like, they never have a character being like freaking out about him.
Wait a minute. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so
maybe I was all by myself.
Maybe the message is a little paranoia is healthy.
Yeah, I suppose that's really interesting. Yeah, the idea that the Federation shouldn't be paranoid, I guess, and yet when it comes to the Romulans and it comes to the Klingons, you know, they do tend to be a little more wary. And we got all the way through this without even mentioning that Sayla makes her first appearance in this episode. Like, there is something for the Federation to be scared of. There literally is a shadowy figure who is working to destroy them. And they recreated the Manchurian Candidate like in the world of Star Trek, but yeah, minus that Cold War paranoia and the idea that this is plausible because we have been told that there are communist agents everywhere. Like, if the Federation doesn't feel that way, then maybe you can have just Picard be like, oh, it's taken care of. Okay, great. And then everyone just lives their lives. Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of, I think we were talking about it before too, of like how it is kind of utopian because they have all this tech and they can know if someone's on the ship or not, but it never feels really invasive, you know? Like, you can send a guy who looks like Geordi off somewhere and, like, you know, like, I imagine it now if this was done even now in this day and age, if you just sent a guy dressed like me somewhere, like, it wouldn't fool anyone.
Yeah, so I guess they didn't scan his DNA, you know, or anything like that.
Well,
so
I think there's like some utopian element of it Well, maybe they just didn't imagine like what could be done with some of this tech, but like I feel like, they just kind of imagined a world where we have all this technology, but we mostly use it to like benefit ourselves, you know what I mean? And not like, I just think the world we live in now, it's like we got the freaking, Ring doorbells, and we're always posting videos of like, look at what my delivery guy did. And they're talking about monitoring like truckers, like if, putting stuff on truckers to monitor them and see if they're awake or not. And it's like, what is going on?
Yeah, there is some singularity, something that they must have overcome in their world. Hopefully we can overcome it in ours. But I don't know if at this point, like, I guess you can do anything you want in Star Trek because it's all metaphor, right? But I wonder if they will try to find a way to tell stories about, a surveillance society in Star Trek at some point, or if that ship has sailed. Because
Section 31, I think, is where you do it.
If that show ever effing happens, yeah.
If they got the gall, that's what they'll do with that show.
De Gaulle, like Charles de Gaulle?
No, if they're bold, that's if they boldly go.
Yeah, well, we know that they are certainly very bold on CBS.
Right.
Well, I think that'll probably do it for this week. Let's put it to bed. Let's tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtracking.
So I can't remember what holiday this was themed around. Is it it's New Year's based, right?
Well, yeah, Christmas and New Year's, just the holidays.
The holidays, because in all the Christmas songs they say, "And a Happy New Year." So it's the same thing.
Happy New Year.
It's the holidays. Yeah. So we're talking about the Voyager episode 1159, which I don't really remember, so that'd be fun. And its similarities with the classic A Christmas Story.
Yes, which I feel like, all right, Manchurian Candidate, solid. Next time on the show, once again, we will be asking you to just go with us here.
This is a bit of a stretch compared to this one where it's very clear, but
it'll all make sense.
It will. That's the thing is, I don't even know because I don't know the episode, but I usually, when people are like, I don't know, I always say, just watch it, and then you'll come away and all you'll think about are the connections.
Yes, if we only did the easy ones, we wouldn't be stretching ourselves.
The show wouldn't be half as good if we just played it safe.
I agree with you completely. Well, we'll be doing that on our next show, but that is it for this show. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, tell a friend, follow us at Backtracking on Twitter, and tell us, too, what you think we should look at in future episodes. We're always looking for new ideas, and as we put our schedule together for 2022, we will be looking for suggestions from the listeners. So if you want to share one of your ideas with us and see if we can get it in the show, let us know. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at GooeyFame.
And I'm at KA1IBAN on Twitter, and all of the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network can be found at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. That's it for us. We'll see you soon, and until then, keep on trekking.